Welcome to UNCAGED, a show that celebrates thought leadership from today's top business leaders. The program provides a voice to amazing executives from around the globe who are shaping the world of business today and mapping the path to the commerce of tomorrow. Today, we're speaking with Hector McNeil. Hey, Hector, how are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm very well, very well. Hector, I'm excited to talk with you. Hector is the co-CEO and founder at HANetf. They are a full-service white label provider of ETFs. In Europe, I would say maybe globally now, but a growing operation for sure. ETFs, exchange-traded funds, are one of the fastest growing financial vehicles these days. And we'll get more into the details of what HANetf is up to. But before we get there, Hector, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Yeah, no problem. Great for having me here, and really appreciate it. So I always class myself as a bit of an ETF boonie. So I've been around them for a long time. You know, I massively believe in them. You know, use them in my own investment, but also invest in ETF businesses. I mean, I've been in ETFs over 20 years now. I started life as a market maker at Susquehanna, where I set up their European desk. You know, big US firm coming to Europe right in the early days of the ETF market, late 90s, early 2000s. You know, and then after 5 years there, I went to be one of the founders and owners of ETF Securities. You know, we took that business from zero to over 30 billion of assets in its time across Europe. We were really famous for inventing gold ETFs. We were the first guys in the world who invented gold ETFs, and we added platinum, palladium, and oil after that. After I left there as an employee, you know, I left with my current business partner, Nik. So Han stands for Hector and Nik. We've been together for 18 years as a business partnership, almost a work marriage, you could call it. So we set up Boost after ETF Securities, which was a short leverage firm which Nik and I co-owned. And after about 3 years of running that business, $1 billion plus of assets, we did a JV with WisdomTree, who at the time one of the top ETF firms in the world, wanted to come to Europe. Didn't have a setup or staff or business, so we created a new entity called WisdomTree Europe. We rolled Boost into that, and then we co-owned WisdomTree with WisdomTree over the time there. And after a couple of years of that, they bought us out of that. So Han's our fourth ETF business. We're the only guys in the world that have set up 4 ETF businesses from scratch. Issued around 600 ETFs and ETPs in that time, just under 9% of the world's total number of products. So not many times you can say you've almost done 10% of a whole marketplace. You know, I'd raised over 45 billion of assets and listed in 23 countries globally. So
I'm excited to talk to you more in detail about the exchange traded fund marketplace in general. But before we get there, I mean, tell me a little bit more in detail about what HANetf is working on specifically.
Yeah, so Han was a slight deviation from our previous businesses. That, you know, previously it was our own IP and our own content. And Han's effectively the spades and shovels that helps asset managers be able to issue and manage ETFs. So we do everything from the, you know, we have the trust and the board of directors. We do all the legal compliance, the fund filings, and the marketing and distribution and capital markets. So I call it a 98% solution. So our clients really only need to look after the content and IP, you know, and to some extent the branding, but we look after the all the heavy lifting. So our 2 big USPs are we've got over 300 years of European ETF experience in the firm, and we can have a fund out in 10 weeks. So that's the real two pluses. Wow. You know, go back to your point in terms of what we're doing. That's interesting is that, you know, because we're relatively new, we've only been in the market for 3 years. You know, we're really at the forefront of the new frontiers of all the ETF markets. So cryptos, thematics, and real assets are where we focus so far.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, I think it's really interesting. And I said this to you, Hector, before we started the show today, that if I was to try to describe ETFs, I would say it's the financial vehicle that seems to be maybe that Web 2.5 vehicle that seems to be the bridge between what the boomers were doing and what these kids are trying to do in the whole, you know, crypto blockchain space. But there seems to be a real interesting fit really with where finance is going. How do you guys see that? How do you see this evolution going forward?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, you know, if you look at the old days of mutual funds, you know, you'd fill a form in, and you'd wait a week to get a price back, and you'd have it in all the different platforms that the fund providers play. Whereas ETFs really are the closest we get to Amazon Prime gratification in the financial services market. I always say, my son and daughters are only going to never going to own a checkbook, and they certainly ain't going to fill forms in, and they're certainly not going to wait a week to get a price, right? So they want to be on the train in the morning, open an app, see all their investments in one place, and if they want to sell one and buy one, they want to see that straight away. And ETFs really play into that space because they're listed on the exchange. They trade all day, every day when the exchange is open. You can buy and sell them to your heart's content, really. And that really plays into that, as I say, that Amazon Prime sort of e-commerce type leaning that we've got in society now, really.
So, I mean, there seem to be new ETFs hitting the market every hour, Hector. I sometimes get lost in the dizzy kind of list of new ETFs that I see every day. How does one navigate this field, and really, how do you make get the best out of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's an old saying in the ETF market, there's 101 things we can do with ETFs. We just haven't thought of them all yet, So it really all depends on the type of
I
client.
thought there was going to be a joke there, Hector, where you're going to say there's 100 and so odd things we could be doing with ETFs, and so we came up with 1,000.
Exactly. Well, I think I'm going to use that when we get to 102, right? But essentially, it just depends on what sort of investor you are, really. I mean, you've obviously got retail to the most professional end, and that's the beauty of ETFs, is they give the same access, to asset classes that whether you're the most professional investor or you're my mum in Middlesbrough. I say it's the first time she can go and buy, for one share around 10 quid, put in a tax account, and she can buy medical cannabis, or she can buy space, or she can buy 5G infrastructure, or carbon credits, or gold. Really, she can put a portfolio together in a very, very coherent, cost-efficient manner, usually sub 1% fees, which in the old days of anywhere between 1.5% and 3%, fees for the privilege of owning a fund, is pretty revolutionary, really. Yeah. So really, I think it just depends on the investor type. But I mean, the thing about it is you can create your own portfolio, across equities, fixed income, commodities, etc. Which 10, 15 years ago, you'd have to go to a private bank or a wealth manager and pay a fortune for. And and there are people out there who will help you put those portfolios together as well. But I think most people have the can do a bit of research, bit of digging, and see what they're after. And then there's plenty of databases out there that you can then go and see which ETF makes sense for you. That's a matter of price. That's a matter of the sort of exposure that you're getting. And also performance. Look at the past performance. I mean, obviously that's no guarantee for the future, but it's a good indicator.
Do you see a big difference in how the American ETFs are approaching the marketplace versus what you're doing?
I'd say the US is probably generally 3 to 5 years ahead of the Europe. I mean, we're at 1.7 trillion now, and the US is about 7 trillion. But actually, 4 years ago, the US market was at 1.7 trillion. So, I think the global market's got a CAGR of about 20% compound each year. It has had for the last 25 years, really. I mean, when I got into ETFs early 2000, the whole global assets under management was 200 billion, and Europe was 20 billion, and now it's 10 trillion, so 10, 11 trillion. So, that march is onward going, really. And, I'd say probably on most things, the US is ahead of us. But I would say on two areas, probably Europe's ahead of the US, and that's crypto and ESG. I mean, we've got over $1 billion.
And that's where everything's going.
It is. And I think it's nice because it means that, we can stand up, I mean, like I mentioned to you earlier, I was at the Miami conference, and, that was the subject matter most people were talking about, because we have a lot of US managers who use HANetf to take their 40 US ETFs and bring them to Europe. Things like EM e-commerce fund or that cloud technology, they first appeared in the US, and then we brought them, over for European investors in our wrapper, which is called UCITS. So that's really what the point of discussions are at this point in time, really.
So let me change the gears a little bit, Hector. The last couple of years have been a little crazy for all of us. some challenges, obviously, with the pandemic, but certainly also opportunities from a business perspective for some folks. And I'd just be curious, what insights and elements have you implemented in your business because of the last couple of years?
Yeah, really interesting, actually. I mean, I think, we hand listed our first product, a little over 3.5 years ago. So the majority of our business has been done, during the lockdown scenario. And then obviously we've got the Ukraine-Russia war now and inflation, etc. So these times are far from normal. I mean, I'm a 50-year-old guy, and I've seen bouts of inflation and recessions, and the banking crisis. But I do think these things have really come on us very quickly in the past couple of years. But I think largely I would say that the markets and the economies have held up pretty well, really, and a lot of that is down to technology enablement. I think. I mean, by the sheer fact we're doing what we're doing now, is this technology somewhat existed, prior to COVID. But I think everybody's pretty much on it now, aren't they, and understand it and use it as everyday living. And the biggest thing we probably did was we went quite quickly in September 2020 to work from home completely, and then coming back. Funny enough, we came back to the office on a sort of 2 to 3 day a week basis because the young kids wanted to
be together.
Yeah.
It's that I think is a fascinating one, which is you almost have to let human nature dictate the plan. I have some offices that, in Europe that immediately went back to the office. Our Spanish office, for example, they missed working together, so they immediately rushed back. Whereas other offices like New York, I think they're happy to be working at home. They don't miss the commute.
Well, I think that's probably the common denominator, isn't it? Is the commute, really, and I think that's really focused people's minds. So I don't think that story is over yet either. I think we're going to see, as you say, I think letting the equilibrium find itself is probably the right way forward, really. And you just got to be reactive to that and just make sure that you're listening to people. Really, I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, no, I love it, and it's great that you're continuing to evolve, because you're absolutely right. I would say that we're going to see several more shifts and changes before the end of this whole thing. So Hector, 2022, as you rightly framed up, has been a year already full of a lot of changes from a more macroeconomic perspective. But in the ETF space and what you guys are working on at HANetf, what are your thoughts for this year, and what are your plans?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, because probably half of our life has been in that sort of growth equity story, the big tech story, and I still think there's a long way to go in that. I mean, the most recent product we did, which was European first, was the metaverse ETF, and I think that's a really interesting scenario. I mean, I make these little predictions that you and I will be sitting around a table virtually in 5 years' time instead of talking two-dimensionally as we are now, right? And I think we'll all be in the room. You'll be able to go and try things on in a shop or look at things through the metaverse. So I think that's going to be a really interesting world. I mean, you touched on it earlier about cryptos as well, the whole blockchain experience. I think that that old adage, there's going to be more inventions in the next 10 years than there's been in the whole of history. I think that's going to be true of every decade now going forward, because ultimately the rate of change and people's ability to react to change is so enormous. And then even then you look at the emerging markets, that whole story around smartphones and e-commerce is just enormous, right? That's going to change the world and probably weigh it in the other direction, unfortunately, from the Western economies to more to those types of worlds, and you don't have to look at that. Interestingly enough, that a lot of it comes from Latin American. You get these sort of Silicon Valley type areas in Latin America or Africa or Eastern Europe. A lot of it's driven by Stanford and Harvard graduates, right? Who go back to their countries and then take those those developments and expand from there. So I think we're gonna see more of that sort of growth story. ESG as well, as I mentioned, we invented a really cool product last year, which is first carbon credit ETP in the world, where we actually buy the emission credits from the EU, hold them physically in a digital wallet, and then we allow clients to get access to that. So you can actually be part of that, decarbonization story, which is pretty cool. And then we did a really, really interesting with gold, where we made the first gold ETF in the world with a raw mint that holds recycled gold. And recycled gold is 100% recyclable, and it's actually 99% less carbon intensive than mining gold. So a lot of people who in the ESG space would say, mining is brown, I can't hold gold, can actually hold it now because it's part of the circular economy. So I think all these different ways of looking at the world is coming at us thick and fast, and we've just got to react to it. And that's really my job, is to sort of see, where I can, lean into that and facilitate it, really.
Well, I can see that you guys are coming up with a lot of innovative products. Certainly, we've been talking about metaverse, ESG. I'd have to say that the new ideas, the innovation in the ESG space is very exciting, and the measurement and maybe some of the standardization around that measurement is even more exciting, because I think that'll open up more fintech and financial opportunities. It's been great connecting with you, Hector. If someone wanted to learn more about what you and HANetf are working on, where can they find you?
Yeah, if they go to HANetf.com, we have a nice section that if people are looking at doing their own ETFs. I mean, funny enough, we've had high net worth guys who've sponsored their own ETFs, so you don't have to be an asset manager or a bank or whatever. If you've got 3 or 4 of your buddies and you think that online gaming is going to be the way forward, or psychedelics or whatever, you believe in that, you can sponsor that, or on the investment side, HANetf.com/products, and you can find all the products there. But equally, feel free to give us a shout at info@HANetf, and we'll pick the phone up and have a chat with you. As I say, we're ETF Moonies, so we love talking about our own business, our own products, but also the industry generally. So we're pretty obsessed by it. Put it that way.
Excellent. Well, we've been really blessed to have Hector McNeil on the show today. He is one of the recognized most influential ETF experts, and we've been talking about his 4th ETF related business, which is HANetf, and it offers a full range of white labeled ETF solutions for individuals, for businesses, as you're establishing ETFs in the marketplace. And clearly they're working on some of the more innovative areas like the metaverse, ESG, as well as some of the tried and true things like gold, but in a new fashion, a new innovative way of doing it. So Hector, thank you so much for being on UNCAGED today. It's been great talking with you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Take care. Cheers.